A storybook ending to the World Baseball Classic, one in which Japan was crowned champion. So I know we often throw around words like dream matchup and instant classic too generously, but not this time, baby. Let's get it on. We'll talk some WBC right now with Gary and Thorne and also Nick Whalen before we get into our NBA segment here. Welcome to the Sweat, everybody, presented by DraftKings. Gojo Gang, they're going to invade the Sweat as they typically do every Wednesday. We also got some best bets around the NHL to share. But Gare Bear, Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout to end the World Baseball Classic. The game was on the line in the ninth inning here, dude. It really was as good as it gets. And then some. Are we going to be stuffing that moment last night into a time capsule?
I think so. I mean, look, I think some of the negativity surrounding the WBC, whether it be because of perceived lack of interest in North America, whether it be because of a couple freak injuries that occurred during this tournament, it all sort of hinges on this idea that, what is the WBC? What has it earned? And, tournaments have to start somewhere. The World Cup at one point was just some guys playing soccer with no one watching. It has to build. And I really do think this could be a moment where we look back in 20 years and go, that was the first WBC that really mattered. That was the one that put it on the map. That was the one that maybe even started making American pitchers go, that looked pretty fun. Maybe I'll do that in 2026. I mean, just some of the stuff that happened, let alone the ending, which, I think we were all doing the math in our head at around the eighth inning, if this and this, maybe Trout against Ohtani. No, that'd be crazy. And then obviously the top of the ninth starts. And I mean, I was impartial. I had no rooting interest aside from just wanting cool stuff to happen. So I was a little disappointed when Jeff McNeil walked, because I think everyone wanted it to be 2 outs in the ninth, Trout versus Ohtani. It's that messes everything up. And then Mookie Betts, what a great guy, grounds into that double play. So we all get exactly what we want. It was just incredible stuff. And then you've got Pedro Martinez after the game on live television, just telling Shohei Ohtani from half of all baseball players how much you mean to us, because I'm gonna read between the lines here. This guy could maybe save baseball. And I'm really of the opinion that baseball does not need saving. I think it's a great sport. It's my favorite sport. But, we see it with the pitch clock implementation. People are spinning their wheels here. They're trying to get young people invested in baseball again. And look, the answer's been standing in front of us the entire time. It's Shohei Ohtani. And that dude's just the best. The whole last week of this tournament could not have gone better.
I truly feel like it could be very impactful on the game, moving forward. Was it the craziest, wildest, best baseball game we've ever seen? No, but most impactful. You could probably make an argument for that. You could probably have a conversation about that. I saw a funny tweet, Gary. Someone said, once again, Mike Trout's quest for victory has been squashed by his Angels teammates. But listen, Trout wants his revenge here. He's already committed to the 2026 edition of the World Baseball Classic. There's been a lot of debate on Twitter. I'm sure you've seen it. You're clearly a guy who's in the WBC is here to stay camp and not the it's not worth the risk camp, right?
Yeah. And look, I think more than anything, it matters what the players think. And I think time and time again, as there have been opportunities for players to maybe get a little cold feet, we saw, I think it was Trout and I think Mookie Betts at the podium, half an hour after the Edwin Diaz injury. And they were asked, obviously you've seen the news about Edwin. Does that affect your thoughts on playing the rest of this tournament? How does that impact what you guys think in terms of these quote unquote exhibition games? And they both were given an opportunity to sort of take, plead the fifth if they wanted to, or take a negative stance. And both came out in full force of that could have happened on the backfields in Florida or in Arizona. You're still playing baseball out in spring training. Things are going to happen, but why wouldn't you want to be here? Why would you? There was a Cubs preseason game, spring training game happening simultaneously to that game last night. And it was just why would you rather be there than be here on a game that's being watched by, I don't know if we have the numbers yet, but I'm going to assume 70 million people or something like that watched that game last night.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so cool, and it's an opportunity to build the game, and I think these guys really do care. And I think a loss like that, I mean, we've talked a lot about who cares about this tournament in terms of the countries. And
Yeah.
it's Japan, it's Venezuela, it's Dominican, it's Puerto Rico. Again, a loss like that, if you're an American baseball player and you're sitting there and you go like, man, I want to beat Shohei Ohtani so bad. Like, I just think it could really start building the importance of this tournament in North America. And once that happens, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and if you are impressed with what Ohtani did against Trout last night to complete the World Baseball Classic, you should be. Mike Trout has had just 3 swinging strikes in only 24 of his 6,174 career MLB plate appearances. So going down, swinging, 3 strikes. Pretty damn good. There's a reason Shohei Ohtani was the MVP of the entire tournament. Pretty impressive NBA slate tonight as well. We got 10 games to choose from here. So Gary, and stick around. RotoWire's Nick Whalen, welcome to the show, my dude. So we have multiple, let's see, some of the biggest favorites on the board right now. Look at this. The Bucks, the Grizz, the Raptors. Congratulations, Gary. But Mr. Whalen, you don't necessarily have to choose from one of these teams on this list. Which favorite is in a favorable spot tonight?
Yeah, we have some huge numbers, some alarming numbers on the board. I'm going to go out to the Western Conference, though, and take the Utah Jazz, -4.5 tonight. They're at home against the Portland Trailblazers. I'm expecting Lauri Markkanen to play in this game. He missed the last one with a back injury, but did practice in full yesterday. So assuming he plays, I think this is a really good spot for the Utah Jazz, mostly because I don't know what the Blazers are doing right now. They're kind of trying to serve 2 masters. They're holding out Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant, and yet they're making the unprecedented move of seemingly tanking while not resting their best player in Damian Lillard. So even with those guys in the lineup, they've been a disaster. They're 2-8 over their last 10. They have the worst net rating in the league over the last 10 games, worse than the Detroit Pistons. Guys, that's like almost impossible to do. And meanwhile, Utah, they've kind of been scuffling around the middle as well, but they beat Sacramento and Boston in consecutive games. I think they're kind of in that same basket as a team like OKC, where they're like, we kind of want to push for like a top 5, top 6 pick. But look, if you guys are just going to hand us a spot in the play-in tournament, we're going to take it.
All right, Gare Bear, which favorite is in your favorite spot?
I'm going to go with the 76ers on the road, -3.5. Really, this kind of boils down to, I just think it's really hard to sweep these back-to-backs. And I know the Bulls got the 76ers on Monday. It took 2 overtime sessions to get that done. But Philadelphia is the better team. And Chicago has not exactly been among the best home teams in the NBA this season. So I'm not necessarily worried about the 76ers being on the road here. They're actually 4-0 ATS their last 4 games coming off of a loss. They're 4-0 ATS their last 4 games on the road. And just in general, they've had the best net rating in the NBA in the month of March by a pretty considerable margin. They're outscoring opponents by 12 points per 100 possessions. So I think Philadelphia's a really good team. I think Chicago's a pretty middling team, even if they did beat them 2 nights ago. I think Philly gets it done in the second game of the little mini 2-game set here.
Yeah, was that Embiid's first career loss against Chicago? Did I see that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it the other night on the show too. Like, he puts up ridiculous numbers against that team and has, and I think at that point it was 12 career games. But let's lock in an underdog that could pull off an upset tonight, Gary. And which team are you looking at?
So I do want to say quickly off the top, I think I'm going to bet the Spurs with the points. That line is crazy. And
it's
I get
huge.
It's arguably the best team in the NBA versus the worst team in the NBA. I get it. But I think if you follow the Spurs' weird resting pattern, I think their good players are going to play tonight. Like, they all sat out last night. Maybe you don't get all of them, but I think like Keldon Johnson will probably play. I think Vassell will probably play. I think Zach Collins will play. And at that point, they should be able to keep this within 18 points. I feel more confident just taking the Knicks +2 against the Heat. This boils down to 2 pretty simple principles. The Knicks, the best team against the spread, or one of the best teams against the spread in the NBA this season on the road. The Heat cannot cover at home. They are 3-9 ATS their last 12 home games. They're also 5-24-1 ATS their last 30 games coming off a win. So they've only covered 5 times coming off their last 30 wins. The Heat, I just don't trust them. Whereas the Knicks, they're healthy again. Jalen Brunson's back in this lineup. They're a great team according to net rating. They're a great team according to pretty much any statistic you want to bring up. I think 2 points is too shallow a line here, even on the road. So give me the Knicks. And like I said, I think I'll also partake in the Spurs tonight.
Okay. Waylon, where do you sit on that, dude? Bucks currently an 18-point home favorite right now.
I can't take the Bucks minus 18 there. I think Arian's right. It's just too big. And, we kind of have to wait and see on the Spurs. I think they have 6 current rotation players on the injury report for tonight, but most of those guys sat out last night. So I think there is a good chance that they play. And, even if and when Milwaukee dominates the first half of that game, it's not like Giannis is going to be playing 45 minutes here. So I think there is a good chance that San Antonio ends up covering in the end. I kind of like the Hawks to win in Minnesota tonight. They're 4-point dogs. They're plus 140 on the money line. I looked into like a ton of ATS metrics, things like that. Couldn't really find any good reason to back up this argument. They're on the second night of a back-to-back, but it was not really a normal back-to-back. That game was essentially over at halftime in Detroit. I'm just kind of worried about, one, the Anthony Edwards situation for Minnesota. I don't know that it's a guarantee that he plays tonight. And two, if Karl Anthony Towns plays, in theory, that's a big piece back in the mix for Minnesota, but this was not a good team when Karl Anthony Towns was in the mix earlier this season. I don't know that it's fair to expect him to come back and just look like himself right away. I think there's a chance that kind of throws things off. So, I'm not sure that it's necessarily the big help that you might think it would be getting Karl Anthony Towns back in the mix. Emerson, last time Karl Anthony Towns played an NBA game, the Jaguars were 4-7, and they were in third place in the AFC South.
There you go. That's how you put it in perspective right there. And then we all know what happened after that. They went on an incredible run. Thanks for opening up this cam, by the way. Completing like the greatest comeback in postseason history, in my opinion. Maybe not as great as 28-3, but 27-0 is still pretty damn good. Game total right now. You like Waylon tonight on the DK Sportsbook?
Look, I'm going back to Portland and Utah, and I'm taking the under 234. It's dangerous, but I do not trust this Blazers team. They are 28th in offense right now. They're without, 2 of their 3 best offensive players in Simons and Grant tonight. The applied total for the Blazers is about 115 in this game based on the spread and the number, and they've only reached that in 1 of their last 7 games. I think teams kind of know what's going on with this offense. It's Dame Lillard or bust. And he went on that awesome run, earlier this month, end of February, where it felt like he was putting up 40 plus every night. He's still getting his numbers, but he's doing it really inefficiently. He's jacking a ton of threes. He's kind of has to work his way to the line. It has not been a productive offense whatsoever. Utah, they've been a little bit better. They play fast. That kind of worries me a little bit, but they're still 23rd in offense over the last 10 games. Unless Dame, has another like 70-point game in him, I just don't really trust Portland to hold up its end of the bargain.
Okay, which total are you going to target tonight on the DK Sportsbook, Aaron?
So let's go back to that San Antonio-Milwaukee game. And I think if you are going to sort of back me on my logic that San Antonio is going to at least have a couple of their key players back, or good players, better players. I don't know how exactly you really categorize players on the Spurs right now, but I think this game goes over 237.5. Generally speaking, the Bucks play in high-scoring games. They are, in the month of March, the number 1 team in the NBA in terms of pace. They are also the number 3 team in terms of offensive rating. So it's not surprising that many of their games tend to hit the over. Specifically at home, 19 of their last 27 home games have hit the over. On the Spurs side of things, they're also 6-2 to the over in their last 8 games overall. So I think in general, with how bad the Spurs are on defense, how good Milwaukee is on offense, and again, just the influx of some actual NBA talent into San Antonio's lineup tonight, it could be a really weird game script in the fourth quarter, but I do think that kind of like summer league vibe tends to be more high scoring than low scoring anyway. So I like the over here. I think it's just high scoring game from both teams.
All right, Gary, let's open up a little more here. Which player prop catches your eye tonight on the DK Sportsbook?
So we already kind of talked about this. Joel Embiid's history against the Chicago Bulls. Joel Embiid's recent history in general. I'm going to take the over 33.5 points on his player prop. He's done this in 7 of his last 8 games. Granted, again, he needed double overtime to do it against the Bulls on Monday, but This guy's just in his zone right now. We talked last week about why, sort of his motivations for scoring all these points, and I don't think anything's changed. This is still someone who's just trying to win the MVP and trying to put up ridiculous stat lines. The Bulls do not have the interior presence defensively to stop Joel Embiid or to hope to stop Joel Embiid. I just think he has his way tonight. And again, he's hit this prop at such a ridiculous pace in the past 3 weeks. Why would I expect him to stop now?
All right. How about you, Waylon?
I'm going to go with Bam Adebayo over 27.5 points plus rebounds. He's gone easily over this number, almost in points alone, over his last 3 games. You're getting a little bit of a lower number tonight just because it's not a great matchup, especially rebounding wise. The Knicks are one of the best rebounding teams in the league, but I think it's completely realistic that we see Adebayo go for something like 20 and 8. He had 32 and 9 against the Knicks back in February. So this is just one of those numbers that jumped out as a little too low to me.
All right, gentlemen, that is all the time we have. Appreciate the help around the NBA. We will have the Gojo gang hanging out with us coming up. Well, they'll react to what went down last night around the WBC. Also, how their brackets are looking. Sweet 16 will tip off tomorrow, and Julian Edlow on the Unreasonable Odds podcast diving into some of those games with a special guest from the Action Network.
Do have a side going in. The game, as much as I like Arkansas UConn, the game of the night in Vegas, Gonzaga UCLA, perfect place for that game. 2 big West Coast fan bases, so I'm sure the building will be buzzing. Gonzaga keeps getting to the Sweet 16, but we know how things kind of go from here for them. The number 1 offensive efficiency in the country, but down there, I think in the 70s right now in terms of defensive efficiency. UCLA, one of those teams that everybody says can win it all because of the balance on both sides of the ball, even without Jalen Clark. We'll see if this is the game where that all catches up. I played UCLA at minus 120 money line in this game. That's the only Sweet 16 bet as we record on Tuesday afternoon, March 21st, that I have thus far. That said, Gonzaga is obviously very capable in these spots, and maybe the injuries for UCLA catch up. But I think that Mick Cronin is going to be able to muck this game up a little bit, slow Gonzaga down, make it more UCLA's style. And if it becomes a defensive, slower game, that obviously favors UCLA. And I think that between Hawkes and Tiger Campbell, they'll still be able to find their offense. So I'm going UCLA due to the balance, due to the defense. But yes, there's a red flag with every game on the board almost right now. And the red flag here is that UCLA is dinged up.
Yeah, Jalen Clark was my favorite player in college basketball, so maybe I put too much emphasis on him. I just think nobody in the country can do what he does, and I have futures on both of these teams. So, but I was crushed when Jalen Clark went down in that Arizona game. But to UCLA's credit, Cronin has figured out so far how to play without him, even in the loss to Arizona. Remember, Arizona hit a 3 late in that game to win it in the Pac-12 tournament.
Yep.
And they held that team down. That's what I was looking for in that game. I wanted to see how UCLA's defense played against an elite offense, and they did well. The interesting thing here is the last 2 times, the recent games that UCLA has played with Gonzaga, they've actually run with them. If you look at those scores, they're surprised. Remember the tournament game a couple years ago where UCLA made that run? It was in the 90s.
Was that in overtime?
Yeah, but that was a fast paced. That was a fast paced game, and I remember being so surprised. So I wouldn't be surprised because of Gonzaga's. One of the things I liked about UCLA coming into this tournament, they can play you any style. They can muck you up, but they will also take advantage of your defensive weaknesses. And one of Gonzaga's defensive weaknesses is transition defense. And UCLA has some athletes. One of the things, I'm going to play this, I'm just going to sit back and watch it because I have the futures going. But one of the things I wouldn't be surprised here if UCLA hits over their team total. Gonzaga's defense is really, really bad. And if UCLA, one of the things is they don't depend on 3-point shots. They're one of the few teams still left in basketball who dribbles in and takes a lot of mid-range 2-pointers. You don't really see that anymore in college basketball. But I think they're going to have success with their offense. I think UCLA moves on here.
I should have also prefaced my play by saying I do have an 18-1 Gonzaga ticket. So I am partially hedging off here at this point. If I lose my UCLA bet, I do get an 18-1 ticket into the Elite Eight. So not all will be lost. That kind of helped put me on UCLA where I was leaning initially anyway.
All right, back here live on the Sweats. Time to do that thing you like, that thing that we do that you like here on the Sweat every Wednesday. The Gojo Gang invading the program. Mike Golick Jr. and Brandon Newman, which, by the way, you can grab their show wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, and so much more. Good morning, everybody. Mike, good morning.
Good morning. This is such a different and exciting vantage point for us here. Normally, we feel like we're staring down at you and Jesse like weird robot overlords on the screen. Yeah. Here, we feel a lot more equal. This is fun.
I know, dude. I just wanted you guys to feel a lot more comfortable today. And Jason Robbins had something very important to do in studio, so we were kicked out of there. Brandon, hello. How are you been, man?
I think Brandon, you've muted yourself.
Dude, what is going on, dude?
There you are. I said, hello, E. How are you and your dogs?
They're doing wonderful. They both just curled up in the same crate together. Yeah, I know. I would do that with you guys too. So the guys on the Unreasonable Odds. So the guys on the Unreasonable Odds podcast, just breaking down some of tomorrow's most intriguing Sweet 16 matchups here, guys. So Mike, how's your bracket looking right now?
It's not sweet out here in my bracket, Emerson. So, and they were actually talking about where the rubber meets the road. So as my Final Four currently sits, I had Alabama and Texas in my Final Four, who are still in the mix. I also had I had Alabama and Texas. I had Marquette and Kansas as the other two, and Kansas is my eventual national champion. So I am in a bit of trouble here as Brandon and I have a bracket wager that's going to result in the loser between the two of us having to go and redo Pro Day. And so the rubber meets, yes, my hamstrings are at stake. I am terrified. And the rubber meets the road in the Sweet 16, Gonzaga versus UCLA. I have Gonzaga going on to the Elite Eight. Brandon has UCLA winning the national championship in his bracket. He's already down a couple members of his Final Four. And so that really may be the matchup that decides which one of me and Brandon is going to blow our hamstring out.
Okay. Brandon, who's your champ? Who was it again?
UCLA.
UCLA. Okay, great.
Yes,
and so you have most of yours intact right now?
Not at all. I think I got Texas and UCLA still existing right now. I really, really need Mike Cronin to just do his thing and stay balanced, as they were talking about before, and win this thing out. But I like my odds with Houston and Texas also at the top. But, I mean, who does have a perfect bracket right now? What's yours look like?
No, mine's pretty gross. I have Texas as my eventual champion, so that's okay. But they were also beating Purdue. So, yeah, dude, Texas, Gonzaga, Creighton, and Purdue is my Final Four. So I don't know, man. Like, could be much worse.
It could be a lot worse, but this is the best point of the tournament now, when everyone's bracket's gone out the window, so you can continue to root for chaos. And thankfully, we've already gotten a ton of chaos, and we have so much more potential for that. So this is the most liberating portion of March Madness. God love everybody. Welcome to the real fun.
So, like, Mike, out of all the madness, what's been your favorite part of it? What's been your favorite storyline? Like, I can't get enough of the Fighting Ross Tuckers. Princeton making this run.
It's very weird because them being a 15 seed is making people root for an Ivy League team. And unless it's college lacrosse, I don't feel like we're normally predisposed to root for the Ivies. That's like one standard deviation point away from rooting for Notre Dame or Duke. And I know most people don't enjoy doing that. You've just got a more illustrious history of winning. So I'm happy for Ross. I felt really bad the other day. So I said when Princeton had their first round upset, I said, if you get blocked by a guy from Princeton, you've got to quit basketball. And I forgot that Ross Tucker is technically a guy from Princeton that used to block people, and he took that as a personal attack. So, Ross, I want to take this as my opportunity to personally apologize to you. Blocking guys on the football field, if you're from Princeton, totally valid. The basketball court, getting more valid by the day.
You're a good man, Mike, admitting when you're wrong and taking the high road. Brandon, what's excited you the most here watching this tournament up to this point?
Honestly, the fact that so many people are watching in the new world of NIL deals and student athletes being able to make money for themselves in ways that they've never been before. I think there's a record on Thursday when the tournament started, 9.2 million people watching, with the women's tournament on ESPN and ABC, 27% over last year's viewing, and they didn't have to compete with anybody earlier this week. So I like the fact that in a time where they said, if we give these players money, the true-blooded fans that love the fact that it's amateurism will slowly start to trickle, but it's the exact opposite. We're seeing some of the best matchups we've seen and more upsets with the availability to move with all those top athletes and prospects.
I'm really enjoying a lot of the matchups in your Gojo Some Shining Moments bracket, to be honest with you. Like, I'm so excited when you guys drop the polls for these, like on Twitter. So the original bracket, I think we're going to punch it up. It looks like this. Here we go. Voting has been ongoing. So where do we stand right now, Mike?
Yeah, so we have officially punched the tickets for everyone into the Sweet 16. So we started off with 32 seeds, as you can see there. We have now moved on to the Sweet 16. And let me tell you what, round one came with some wild upsets. If you look at the West region and the South region, both went chalk. We have 1 through 4 moving on in both of those regions. No surprising there. That would be Elon buying Twitter, Pete Davidson, ChatGPT, and Queen Elizabeth in the West region. And then the South region, the slap going up against Kate Bush running up that hill. And then Don't Worry, Darling, Top Gun going up against each other in the South. It's the East and North that went haywire. I did not see, Emerson, Wednesday Addams taking down Taylor Swift, the 1 seed, and Corn Kid upsetting Beyonce, the 2 seed, in my crystal ball going into this tournament. Flabbergasted, astounded, Bill Walton words spewing out of my head here. This is amazing.
I think, honestly, like the Pete Davidson and Harry and Meghan Tell-All thing, I think those seeds should have been flipped, in my opinion, because I'm all about, like, in this household with my wife, we are all about the Harry and Meghan drama, and I was upset when the 6th seed Harry and Meghan could not upset Pete Davidson.
Can we talk about the actual sports that are going on there? The fact that Brock Purdy's season beat LeBron James. Taking the crown of the scoring champion from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then, this is what I'm most interested in. If Brock Purdy's moved on to Sweet 16, if his moment beats Messi and Mbappe in the World Cup that we just had, the internet is broken.
I mean, we already had Aaron Judge's home run race take down Tom Brady's retirements. Like the biggest 1-8 matchup, and that was our most voted on region, Emerson. The sports region garnered thousands of votes, and now we have got Aaron Judge going up against the Kelsey brothers, and as Brandon said, the World Cup going against Brock Purdy. The World Cup was one of the big winners of the first round, criminally underseeded by your boy, and so I'd imagine they're primed for a deep tournament run unless people really mess this up.
Yeah, the Aaron Judge like home run race maybe might have pissed off more people than made more people like happy.
Right. It was more known for the college football cut-ins than it was the actual home run race.
Speaking of drama, we talked about the Aaron Rodgers saga last week here, Brandon, how it would have played out. It still hasn't played out right now. Who do you think has the leverage right now? Which side do you think has the most leverage?
Oddly enough, I feel like it's the Jets because that's the place that Aaron Rodgers wants to play.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Packers are playing with the fact that Aaron Rodgers is trying to be as accommodable. He's trying to get out of Green Bay without too much smoke. And I think he is ruffling feathers on the way out like Brett Favre did, and he doesn't want to have those same storylines. But the more of this push and pull, I don't know what is going on, but I feel like Aaron Rodgers is at the center of it in a more negative way than positive way.
Which side do you think eventually caves first, Mike?
I honestly think that the leverage conversation here is pretty minimal, however you look at it one way or the other. I don't think one team has a market amount of leverage over the other. And I think eventually it's going to be the Packers probably getting a little less in return than they want just because they are a seller with one buyer. And when you talk about market leverage, that's one area where they're definitely at a disadvantage. They can't create any sort of bidding war here. They don't have anybody else to throw this to try and create that. So I'd imagine they're not going to get quite as much as they want. But at the same time, when you think about what could be most uncomfortable for who as the other leverage point, yeah, Aaron Rodgers sticking around on the Packers roster, them not getting draft capital before the 2023 draft, those things are uncomfortable. If you're the Jets, you have now basically talked about Aaron Rodgers being your quarterback in public. He's talked about being your quarterback in public enough to where your fans, the players in your locker room are all expecting your future to involve Aaron Rodgers. And if for some reason that didn't come to fruition, I'm sorry, you've let the guy come in and start decorating already, whether it was a list of players or just players that he gave his thumbs up to, the Allen Lazard signing. You've started operating as if he is your quarterback. And if you've got to pivot, now all of a sudden, I think that puts the Jets in a much more uncomfortable position football-wise, especially relative to where they've been, which is bad. B-A-D bad for a long time.
Brandon, I got to ask you too, because there was the report yesterday that Lamar Jackson is ready to move on. At least that's what one of his representatives are reportedly telling teams. How does that make you feel as a Lamar Jackson stan?
You mean move on in what way? Like go ahead and sign his contract?
Like I think he wants to be, according to this report, like he wants to be out of Baltimore. I think he's kind of over it. He's ready to move on.
Okay. This is new news for me.
Yeah.
I really love the franchise tag. I would say, no.
Like you're staying here.
I think it's clear. Like he's not allowed to leave. Not this season. He can be upset and disgruntled. And if he's willing to drop his stock by playing poorly, then I'm willing to see what that looks like for the Ravens. But we don't have any other options here, and I can't imagine the Baltimore Ravens playing football next year without Lamar Jackson at quarterback.
Yeah, because Mike, there hasn't been like much news on the Jackson front, which, since he got franchise tag, as Brandon already mentioned, like that makes this latest report significant, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is still a spot. And I've had this conversation with Brandon and my dad, and I think I was even a little too far out over my skis. This idea that if the Ravens did match a price that ultimately is good for Lamar Jackson, money would make this relationship feel a little better on the other side. I think if you are Lamar Jackson and you're trying to create some sort of market for yourself, knowing that, hey, you'd be willing to actually help and go along with an offer that would make it difficult for Baltimore, maybe that counts for something. But to Brandon's point about the franchise tag, he doesn't have to play, and I don't think he would. I think based on what Lamar Jackson's done right now, remember, you can only get fined for missing time by a team if you're under contract. We went through this with Le'Veon Bell. If he doesn't sign the franchise tag, they're not going to be taking money from him. They're just not going to be getting the services of their quarterback, and he's shown he's willing to go out on a limb to be a market setter, to be someone that changes the paradigm of these conversations. That's the only reason you go this far and risk it. And so I struggle to see a world where if it comes to the point where it's either sit out or play on the franchise tag, I don't think there's any way on God's green earth he plays on that franchise tag for Baltimore.
Yeah. I don't think that's been talked about enough too, Mike. The fact that he just could sit out and say, no, I'm not playing football. So if assuming Aaron Rodgers is like eventually dealt to the Jets here, Green Bay, in my opinion, could use a more experienced quarterback to back up Jordan Love, who's going to make his debut here as the QB1. Hey, maybe that guy could be Cam Newton, Mike. He threw at Auburn's Pro Day yesterday. He's attempting to resurrect his career. He said, ain't 32 MFers better than me. So he's gone unsigned for more than a year. Looking at the numbers on your screen from his last full season in the league, which is with the Pats a couple of years ago. Who's excited for another potential Cam comeback? Mike?
I'm probably good on that. I was gonna say Cam Newton's dad, very excited. What I'll say is I want to know, because I think the last time we saw Cam, whether it was that New England run or later on in Carolina, arm looked pretty cooked. It was not at what we had once seen, even for a guy who, listen, accuracy was never the sell. It was what he could do as a deep passer. It was obviously what he could do with his legs. The most unique quarterback physical talent I've ever seen. I don't think that there's an NFL starting job out there for him right now. Maybe if things really go sideways for a team like the Washington Commanders, you could take a swing on someone like this. But I'm more interested to know, and this goes back to last offseason when we had MFergate with Tom Brady on the shop, where he said they chose that MFer over me, and we
Yeah.
were all dying to know who it was. I want to know, because it's not about all the quarterbacks here. There had to be one or two signings that Cam Newton really looked at and went and said, that guy, and we need to figure out who that signing was. Early thought for me, Baker Mayfield signing with Tampa Bay. I think that might have been the one to set Cam over.
Oh, yeah, that's a good guess, Brandon.
Yeah, but I think that he wants to chase Baker Mayfield to Tampa. Imagine the quarterback battle this offseason with Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield, and Cam Newton. Cam Newton, who's famously said back in the day that he couldn't be a backup in the Patriots locker room because he's too big of a personality. Like the dance competitions between Cam and Baker, I'm all for it.
All right. Are you guys all for the WBC? Because I know that you had Jared on. We know he's super pro WBC here. Where do you guys sit on this event? Because, Mike, I saw you tweeting about it last night. It could not end on a better note. Like, obviously, I think you want the Americans to win, everyone over here in this neck of the woods. But, dude, two teammates, the best to ever play the game. Like, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
The product that the World Baseball Classic put out there, between epic comebacks, between Trey Turner becoming Captain America and going absolutely ham, refusing to stop mashing dingers. And listen, some of it's timing and luck, right? We talk about this all the time with baseball. One of the most difficult things this sport faces is you're never guaranteed in the biggest moments to have the best players in that spot. Just because of the way the batting order works out, all the parts of this that you can't really control, you don't always get what we got last night, which was timing and the situation yielding a result that you would script in a movie. Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in the top of the ninth with 2 outs with the game on the line, and Shohei getting to cut down his own teammate. It was one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. We talked about with Jared how this has done major numbers on social, which is not always a place, social media, that you think of the popularity of baseball being expressed with a younger audience. It's got the players genuinely juiced to do this. I even saw Rob Manfred come out and say he wants to see more star pitchers make their way into the World Baseball Classic. So I think the commissioner smartly leaning into the popularity he's seen here. This is something, and I saw Jeff Passan say this on with the Levitard show, guys. The WBC and Major League Baseball are not warring factions. They are symbiotic and they should be working together. And that couldn't be the hope, that you see this kind of energy from players as we get into more meaningful games, certainly not in the regular season always, but as you get into the postseason, more of this personality, and that you see some of this excitement around it from fans who can try and carry this over to the MLB product.
Brandon, that left the baseball world in a frenzy last night when Trout stepped into that box and there was Ohtani on the mound staring him down.
It's beautiful. I mean, the USA captain versus the Japanese captain. Obviously, we talked about the teammates, the two best. Like, it's an historical moment that can only happen on that stage. And even for Mike Trout at the end of the game to be on the booth with the guys over there at Fox Sports and say that it's the biggest game he's ever played in, the most important game he's ever played. And obviously, the Venezuelan game and how that went out was, like he said, the most exciting. But I think one thing Jared mentioned on the podcast was that this is going to help the exposure of MLB and help it get more popular within the United States. I think he's spot on there, because everyone is now chasing baseball in a very different way after the end result of the WBC.
By the way, free Shohei Ohtani. This is all the more reason we need to get him the hell out of the Angels. Like, we can't save Mike Trout anymore. We need to get Shohei out of there.
I mean, like they both like made the bed that they slept in. They both chose to go there. You know?
Oh, they did, and now I hope Shohei chooses to go somewhere else. Now that he's seen that he will never play in games like this as long as he is an Angel.
With that atmosphere, that's what I'm saying. Come to the Red Sox. You know, mile down the road from the apartment here. I'd love to see you around a little more, Shohei. Gentlemen, Gojo Rose time. So who or what pulls in the honor this week, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to go recency bias on this one. Lou Dort, baby, the Dorture Chamber, one of the better nicknames in the NBA right now. How about Oklahoma City sitting here as a 7 seed inside the play-in currently in the Western Conference? We know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's been the story of them for the year, but this is a team that was sort of caught between worlds and has now found themselves as an NBA playoff contender. And last night in their win against the Clippers, it was so bizarre for me to watch, because You had Lou Dort guarding Kawhi Leonard at the end of the game. Kawhi Leonard failing to get a shot off because Lou Dort evaded 4 different screen attempts and stuck to him like glue. Lou Dort played defense on Kawhi Leonard the way Kawhi Leonard used to play defense on people. It was jarring to see, but good on Oklahoma City, good on the Dorcher Chamber, and should make for a very interesting and chaotic Western Conference playoffs that we already knew we were going to get. It's been one of the wildest years in that conference that we've seen in a while.
Brandon, who gets your Gojo Rose of the week?
I think I got to go with LeBron James making his return from injury. The Lakers are officially a play-in team, and Mario whatever his name is, out here chirping saying no one's afraid of LeBron James anymore in the NBA. Like, yes, of course that's the case, but you are afraid of his team, especially when he's on it doing his thing and they're hitting at the right time. I love what I'm seeing from LeBron. I don't know what this will mean for actual run, but how dirty and ugly the West has looked. I know the East is looking great with your Celtics over there, but I think the West is wide open.
Yeah, you nailed it. It was Mario Chalmers who said nobody fears him, talking about his former teammate. Guys, you're awesome. Appreciate it. Love you as always. We'll see you next week. Keep doing that thing we like with the moments bracket. Thoroughly enjoying that. Okay. All right, so now over the weekend, Massachusetts state launch party at Banners here in downtown Boston. Former Super Bowl hero James White sat down with our Julian Edlow. Here's part of their conversation.
All right, Julian Edlow here for DraftKings with 3-time Super Bowl champ from the New England Patriots, James White. We're here at Banners by the TD Garden. It's our Massachusetts launch party for DK Sportsbook, but a good person to talk Patriots football with right here. Let's relive the past first before we look at the state of the current team. Obviously, you were a member of 3 of those Super Bowl teams with Tom Brady. Just think back, what's your favorite experience? What's your craziest experience from that run of being part of a Tom Brady dynasty?
Favorite experience is hard to pick one, but I guess the one that most people will probably say is Super Bowl 51. That was a crazy game, obviously. A lot of emotions, a lot of ups and downs, but it just speaks to the type of team that we have. It just never count us out, no matter how many points we're down. You just work so hard all year long to be in that moment right there. So we just found a way to get back on top.
DraftKings Sportsbook, obviously. We're talking a little bit of sports betting here. I had you 50-1, my man, Super Bowl MVP in that game. I don't know. I thought you had a better game than Tom Brady. I'll say it. You don't have to say anything. I'll handle that part for you. Last one from those Super Bowl teams, I think, Brady, Belichick, they outlines the Patriot way, do your job. What's something from that run that people don't know, that you can give a little peek behind the curtain?
Don't know? The locker room, how close that locker room was, and the way we were able to keep a lot of those faces in the building, like Tom, Devin McCourty, Matt Slater, Rob Ninkovich, all those type of guys. They were able to mold the young guys like myself. As soon as you step into the locker room, you watch the way those guys work, the way they prepared, and it's easy for you to become a pro if you just follow those older veteran guys. And that kind of shaped me to the pro athlete that I was.
All right, so let's look forward to this team. You're obviously no longer there. You mentioned McCourty. He just retired. It's kind of a new era. Obviously, it starts at the quarterback position with Mac Jones. Get a off year and then take a little bit of a step back. But with the Patriots at right now, what do you think with the way they're building? And the division in the AFC, it's stacked. Like, what's the long-term goal right now with the Patriots to get better?
I think they're in a great spot. Obviously, last year was a little bit of a rough patch or whatnot, but I think bringing in Bill O'Brien as the OC will be a big year 3 for Mac. I think he is the guy for the job. I know he's chomping at the bit to get back out there, and I think they'll be poised for a great year. The division is really tough. Buffalo's good. Miami's building something, and the Jets, they're getting Aaron Rodgers and whatnot. So it's going to be really competitive.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. Whenever
the New York Jets.
Whenever that actually breaks news and whatnot. But the division is tough. As long as Bill Belichick is the head coach of the Patriots, there's always going to be opportunity for them to make the playoffs or possibly be in the Super Bowl. And they made some good offseason moves so far. With Juju, bringing back Jonathan Jones, especially after Devin retired, keeping him in the defensive backfield was huge too.
You're an offensive guy. Talk to me real quick about that offense. You just mentioned Juju comes in. You add again. It seems like the dual tight end threat is something that Belichick wants here. You add Mike Gesicki to Hunter Henry. What do you think about that offense? And Bill O'Brien, obviously, stepping back into that role. What do you think about that offense next year?
I think it's going to be really good. You got Mac, you got a lot of returning offensive linemen. You got Ramondre, you've got Tyquan Thornton you drafted last year. You got Devontae Parker. You got a lot of good talented guys. You got speed. You got the 2 tight ends, 2 big body tight ends. So, Bill O'Brien always liked to use 2 tight ends back when he was coaching the Patriots back in the past. So, I think they're in for a big year.
All right, for James White, for Julian Edlow, we're here at Banners at the DraftKings Massachusetts launch party.
All right, nice work, gentlemen. Good to see James White doing well in retirement. Couple games tonight on the NHL slate. So you got the Penguins, AJ's Penguins at the Avs, the Coyotes visiting my Oilers. The Pens have dropped 4 straight games. Pittsburgh total just 3 goals in the last 3 contests. That's disgusting, AJ. The Avs rounding in the championship form too. What have they won? 6 consecutive outings. Good to have you here, AJ. Good morning. How you doing?
Not good with that lead-in about the Penguins going up against the Avs, man. It projects to be a brutal game tonight, to be totally honest. I'm not sure I want to even watch it. I probably will because I'm a glutton for punishment, but I'm not going into this one with any level of optimism, that's for sure.
I mean, it could be worse. Could be Arizona trying to avoid a 5th straight loss to the Oilers and got blasted by them 8-2 last time they met in December. So let's dive into the DFS side of this thing while you're here. We'll get into the sportsbook side here in just a moment, but starting with a center who stands out to you tonight. So again, a 2-game slate. Oilers are on the menu, which means is it a Connor McDavid night with just 2 games, dude?
It's really tempting to go that route, but I think I'd rather use McKinnon here. Yeah, it's only $200 worth of savings, but every buck is going to count if you have to go big in your lineup here. McKinnon is on a 9-game point streak right now. He's racked up 6 goals and 10 assists over that stretch. 6 of those points have come with the man advantage. And ultimately, though, I think if you're looking at the top of the board, it might even be worth it to go down for Leon Draisaitl at 7,900 here. That's significantly cheaper than the top 2 options on the board. He has points in all but 1 of his last 19 games, including 15 goals over that stretch. So an argument can be made for all 3 guys, but I think if you're trying to give yourself more flexibility, you look at Draisaitl. If you're insisting on paying up for one of the top 2, I think you go McKinnon over McDavid just for that incremental savings there.
So then at the wing, which dude makes the most sense in your opinion tonight? What's the move?
Well, if you're going to follow me to Leon Draisaitl here, I think you look at the stack options and go further down the price range with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins right now at just $6K here, 8 points in his last 5 games. And like I said, you pair him up with Draisaitl, so you're doubling down there. I think you could consider Valeri Nichushkin, but he's only saving you $100 compared to Nugent-Hopkins here. So I prefer to stick with the Oilers matchup in that one, but he is a pick if you want to go Colorado.
All right, so back on the blue line, I think it's usually the same story, different nights. Where are you going to be spending your money here?
Yeah, same story, different night. Do you pay up for Cale Makar?
Yeah,
is the ultimate question. The thing is, we don't know if he's going to play yet, and that's the question mark here. I think if he's not playing, you almost have to put Bowen Byram in your lineup here. He's only 4,100 for the Avs. He's got 4 points in his last 5 contests. We saw his minutes jump up significantly in his last game with Cale Makar out. So I think the small slate, he could be in play either way. You could consider going high-low, going Makar and Byram. You could consider fading Makar because he's obviously dealing with some sort of injury here. But Bowen Byram will get the added minutes if Makar is out. So I think he becomes a lock without Makar. He's still an option even with him, though.
All right, let's go to the sports book now, AJ. Which one of these games is most interesting from a betting perspective here? I know it could pain you, but could the Avs as moderate favorites be a strong play?
Oh, they absolutely are. I mean, I'm half tempted to just bet on them so that when the Penguins lose, I at least get some money out of it, right? And then I don't feel bad. The Penguins win, it's worth the cost. But really, I know I recommended the Coyotes yesterday, and they did lose. They're on the second game of a back-to-back, but they were close. It was a 1-goal game here. They almost pulled off that upset, and you're getting even better odds at plus 360 here. So it's kind of worth considering in that spot. But ultimately, like you said, Emerson, I would probably go Avs on the puck line. Comes in at plus 155. Penguins have no defense right now. Everybody's hurt. They've got an AHL old veteran squad going right now. And the Avs offense has just been running rampant over everybody. Penguins also don't have good net minding right now. I mean, there's no reason not to think the Avs can go in and win this game by at least a goal and a half.
Right, because they've been rolling up the offense, and even the Avs themselves have started to get some tremendous goaltending. Okay, so then one more question for you, a player prop. Is there a player prop that really stands out to you on just a 2-game slate or an area you don't really want to touch?
No, I've got a couple of options. They're not heavy juice returns, so you do have to give a little bit on it, but minus 140 for Draisaitl to score, I think, is still decent value. Again, you're not getting plus money here. I wouldn't risk McDavid, even with how good he is and how often he scores. Minus 110 just doesn't make sense here in this spot. You could go Nugent Hopkins at plus 135. I think he's in a good matchup with being on that line with Draisaitl here. In the other game, I do like going McKinnon. Again, you're giving up a little bit of juice, minus 120 for him to score, but I think he's got a very strong possibility to do that. His power play prop was pretty decent to get his points on the power play. I think it was minus 110. So that's an option there as well. Like I said, the Penguins don't have the regular complement of defensemen. So the power play for the Avs could look even better here.
All right, AJ, we miss Paul. Hope he's feeling a little better. We'll be back with us tomorrow or later this week. Appreciate your help with the NHL slate, my dude. We have 6 Madden games kicking off here at high noon. That'll start with the Jags and the Dolphins, and then I'll be back here on the DK social channels around 5 o'clock Eastern time with Jeff Ulrich and Nick Fryer. So we'll dive into more of the NFL news, maybe some hockey bets. Maybe Nick will dish out some NBA bets for you too if you missed that earlier in the show. So we will see everybody tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern time.